If you hire someone from outside of franchising, in general, they will have much higher budget experience. So they've managed much larger budgets. They've been more innovative, have a whole idea and framework as to why. But I think e-commerce is 3 years ahead of franchising. So we can look to that for marketing tactics. And so they're going to be more innovative, but they will not understand or grasp the complexities of a franchise system and how to drive change. So I've seen them come in with all these ideas and innovation, but then just hit roadblock after roadblock and get frustrated and dejected.
Representing Franchise Secrets, Erik Van Horn.
Aren Johnstone, welcome back to the pod.
Erik Van Horn, it's great to be back on. It's been a while. Very excited to be back on today. Thanks for having me.
I all of a sudden we were talking about all kinds of stuff, and I said, I'm hitting record right now. And you're like, hey, you want to hear something cool with AI? I'm like, of course I do. Like, why wouldn't I? That's a stupid question. And then you told me something that you did, and then I'm like, oh, you need to get Whisperflow, WISPRFLOW.ai. I'm looking at it, and for people that don't love typing, like, this thing's a game changer. I've talked about it on the podcast before, but this is one of the things that I use all the time. Like, I don't have to type anymore. And I was a really slow typer, probably 19 to 22 words a minute. And it was all like misspelled and just horrible. So this has improved my productivity 10x. I say 10x because that's a popular thing to say.
Yeah, 10x for sure. I'm going to download it right after this. That'll save me from, I do use ChatGPT. You can talk to Cove. I do use the voice talking back and forth more than I type now. So now you're just going to make it even better. So thanks, Erik, for Whisperflow. Great way to start the meeting today.
So you're a prepper. Like, we were talking, like, you're a hardcore prepper. Talk about how you being a hardcore prepper and using AI.
Yeah. So yeah, I like to prep and for meetings and conversations. I found what's the saying?
Food?
No, you fall to the level of your preparation. That's my favorite saying. So you will fall to the level of your preparation. And so I was telling Erik, for this podcast, I wanted to make sure I got my thoughts clear because I have a lot of opinions on this topic today. And so to prep, I actually asked ChatGPT to look up Erik Van Horn in the Franchise Secrets podcast, which it did. And I said, pretend to be Erik Van Horn and interview me, and then give me coaching and feedback to make it more concise and clear. And it did a fantastic job. It basically was exactly Erik Van Horn minus your voice. So hopefully it's a good podcast today and my thoughts are clear today.
Well, I've asked ChatGPT, like, who's the best host in franchising? Who's got the best podcast in the world in franchising? And I want it to say me, but it always kicks out something like, you're not that great, but you have the most amazing guests on. I'm joking. It hasn't really said that, but I do have the most amazing guests. And so the bar's high. I mean, you've been prepping for a while now, and we'll see how good AI is, because you are a lot more prepared than I am. I'm like, I've got to get Aren on the podcast. And then you gave me a number of topics, and I'm like, we'll choose option 3. And then I'm ready for option 3, but you are way more ready than option 3 than I am.
Okay. Yeah. So option 3, and I won't, just to be clear, not to raise the expectations too high for the listeners. I only went through it one time. So we just went one walkthrough, which was helpful, but no, I'm really excited. So Erik, thanks for having me on. I mean, Erik and I have talked a lot about, hiring from inside of franchising versus hiring from outside of franchising. We've talked about this at conferences. I know, Erik, you run teams or advise teams, and you hire people from inside and outside of franchising. And so whenever I see this topic, which the topic is observations from working with 70 plus CMOs of franchise brands hired from inside and outside of franchising, that gets me excited. Like, that topic is something that we deal with every day. And so I have a lot of experience and observations and personal experience. Like, my background is from e-commerce, and so I came into the franchising world and from outside of franchising. And so I have a lot of personal experience I can share and maybe help franchisors out there as they're trying to build their teams to serve their franchisees. So,
Well, I thought that was option 2. Option 3 was how to invest $10,000 and make $1 million overnight in franchising without lifting a finger. Like that's what I thought the topic was, but we'll go with your topic instead since you prepped so much for it. But I think the listeners
that's
would
next week.
like
That's
the other
next
one.
week.
Oh yeah. Those are private conversations about how to buy a franchise and get rich quick, because it always works almost never. All right. Tell the audience who you are.
Exactly.
Who are you? They need to know who you are.
Who am I? The enigma. My name is Aren Johnstone. I'm the CEO and one of the owners here at Franchise Ramp. Franchise Ramp is a marketing technology, creative, and paid digital agency. So we work with, we work with over 1,100 different franchise locations. We exclusively work in franchising. We work with over 25 brands now, primarily in the fitness, wellness, youth enrichment, home service, and beauty space. And so we're very selective with the brands we work with. My 2 partners in the business who are veteran franchisees. At this point, they've owned and operated over 60 plus franchise locations across 5 different brands. And so I think this is really important for the context of the conversation today. As a company, our mission is to help franchisees achieve their entrepreneurial dreams. And so throughout everything we do culturally as an organization, we're very, very focused on serving the franchisees, which I firmly believe is the core component of all franchise success. And so that's the lens of which I'm coming into this today. My background is in e-commerce. I've owned in a couple different e-commerce businesses. And then my last business was an e-com ad agency in the early days of Facebook advertising. And so our sweet spot was sort of $500,000 to $1.5 million a month in ad spend. So pretty large e-com brands. That is actually where I met Mr. Van Horn and Erik. Thank you publicly to introducing me to my partners, Peter Anson and Brian Holmes at Franchise Ramp. So Erik got me into this crazy world that we call franchising. So thanks, Erik.
It was an easy introduction to make, and holy cow, have you grown and leading a great brand. And the brand that you have, I mean, with Franchise Ramp, it was founded by franchisees, and that's why you guys are so franchisee focused. And I don't let people come on the podcast and pitch their stuff. But I just had Brian Holmes on, the founder. You're on. You guys are all related to Franchise Ramp, but like you're not going to work with most companies. Like they're like a lot of those franchise companies out there, especially in the emerging brand space. It's like, no, you're not large enough to work with Franchise Ramp yet. You have to be at a certain level. So just so the audience knows, they are not here to pitch you. It's not a brand commercial. Like these are trusted friends that come on the pod to give a lot of value. I have a serious question for you.
Absolutely.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, we take that. We only work with brands where we are 100% confident going into it, or we'll say 95, that we can over deliver on our promises and that their goals align with what our core products are. So we're very picky about it. And goal today is definitely not to sell Franchise Ramp. It's more to share experiences across all these different brands and industries that we've worked with and inside franchising to try to help, I think, franchisors go faster and support their franchisees along the way, which I think is underserved sometimes. So
we'll have to talk about it sometime, but like I had somebody that's in franchising, started a franchise brand, and they're like, "Hey, Erik, can I get an introduction to this type of vendor?" And I'm like, "I'd love to." I tried to find an introduction to that particular type of vendor, and it has nothing to do with marketing, by the way. And they're like, "Why can't I get your vendor? Like who you work with?" I'm like, "Well, our vendor for this particular thing will not work with emerging brands. They work with our emerging brands at Front Street, but they don't work with other emerging brands." And so that's a good thing for us and our brands. But there's a lot of great vendors out there that won't work with emerging brands. Have you found that to be true?
Yeah. So I think as an agency, whenever we onboard in a brand, we train a minimum of 8 people. So we will train a success lead, a paid media lead, a search lead, a creative lead, And then we have to have someone in technology who understands the CRM integration and overall technology structure. And so to execute at a really high level, we have to have all those key components, and that costs a lot of money to train that many people. And so if you're working with emerging brands and they simply just want you to run paid media for a few locations, and it's really difficult to justify the cost to deliver that exceptional product. There are certain agencies who specialize in emerging where they will do more of everything for you. They'll help you build your website. They're more for full service, and that's how they can justify the expenditures on their end. But yeah, in our business, we're so very niche. We are a paid media agency. We have software products we built in house to support the effectiveness of our paid media. We have a creative team who supports the effectiveness of our paid media. So we're very hyper focused on that. And to make our model work and hire the quality people we need to deliver the results we do, we have to work with brands with enough locations. So I think that is pretty thorough on why, but we're always open to working with the front street brands, so to speak. So Erik always has only brings the
and that's common out there with some of the top tier vendors, which I wish it wasn't the case, but that's another podcast for another day. All right, the elephant in the room. I don't like pronouncing your last name. I do like pronouncing your first name. It's Aren. Aren? Is it Aren? Is that how I pronounce your first name? Because I don't pronounce your last name correctly.
just Yeah, it's regular Aren. I say my parents were just feeling wild, and then Johnston. So no E. You just pronounce it without the E, and there you go. So,
all right, we got that under control. I don't even know why I showed up for this podcast, because you prepped so much, because you're a big time prepper. What was my first question going to be to you?
So Erik, first question. Okay, well, I'll just bring us back. So Erik and I, we've talked about this before, and I think it's really so. Okay, when you're building a franchise brand, a huge component to any business, and especially I think franchising, is who do you hire to help you grow the business. So as the founder or executive of the franchise brand and organization, you typically are going to have pretty aggressive growth goals, like most founders do. And so the team that you bring in around you is incredibly important to serving that path and mission. So a lot of that's business 101. And so for a little context, franchise ramp, we work with brands, some emerging brands, but we also work with ecosystems that are private equity backed that have 10 or 12 brands in a portfolio and thousands of locations. We work with publicly traded franchise organizations. So we really work with a variety of brands at different stages and sizes. And so along that journey, we've worked with over 70 different CMOs at this point, hired from starting as an executive assistant, getting a marketing entry-level job, then a director of marketing, and now a CMO. So their entire careers in franchising. And then on the flip side, we've worked with CMOs who have been the CMOs of Fortune 500 companies and have every title and experience that you would need to impress a private equity board or public shareholders. And so across that, there has been a lot of learnings that I think are very enriched. So I think there's benefits and risks to both. And this is a great platform to share that, because I think Erik, do you see that? Is that a common challenge that brands have as they're starting to scale? Is like, who do we hire? Where do we find this talent to take us to the next level? Is it inside of franchising or outside of franchising?
Yes, it's a big question. Like, who do I hire next, and where do I find them? And there are certain positions in franchising that we think they should have franchising experience, and others it doesn't really matter. And maybe industry experience is more important than franchising experience, or a combination of the two. But if you have a combination of franchising and industry experience, you're probably poaching somebody from another brand, or use an executive recruiter to bring them in, and they might have for lack of a better word, head trash that they come with, because they've been used to doing it a certain way for a long time. And that could be said of both people inside and outside of franchising. But it's a common question that we get as we talk to early stage franchisors. And it's beyond just like the CMO or even C-level suite. Like, who do I hire next? Is it a franchise business coach? And then do I hire someone over them or under them? And it's just a big confusing mess out there for most emerging brands, because there's not necessarily a clear-cut answer. Depends on where they are in their stage, where they want to go, how fast they want to grow, and what the ultimate goal is. So it's a bigger conversation. We have, like, when we start working with brands, we have like 5-year projection that Jeff puts on Excel, and it's kind of the timeline to go from where you are today as a founder only to scaling at a certain rate to a possible exit. Like, what does that look like? Who do you hire and when? But most brands don't have a Jeff that provides that to them. And even if it is, it's not like that always happens just exactly as it's laid out in the spreadsheet, because something will change. We start growing here more, not growing as fast here. Ooh, need more stuff with inventory. There's just a lot of different dynamics. But the common question is, how do I grow? And who do I hire and when? And then inside or outside of franchising. So I think this conversation, although it'd be focused on kind of like marketing and CMO, it's kind of, a wider conversation as well, both for franchisees and franchisors, because franchisees, you have to work in these different dynamics as you are working with the brand and who they bring in. So it'll be helpful for them to understand, like, how do I work within that framework? Also for franchise buyers, like, who might I work better with? And as I start to look at the stack of talent in a brand, who, like, they'll understand who fits where, franchising, non-franchising background. And if it's all non-franchising background in a brand that's growing really fast, very, very big red flags on, they don't know how to deal with franchisees, because they might be great at marketing, might be great at marketing in an industry, but dealing with franchisees is a whole level of a whole new level in all kinds of ways. So that's my perspective.
Yeah, it is. I mean, in any business, it's, if we have a plan to get there, we have to have the right people on the bus to get us there. Like, that's pretty fundamental. And so yeah, I think the goal of this is, I think Erik and I can try to map out for franchisors what is a good framework to think about this as franchisees, how to work correctly with either type of candidate or executive that you have supporting you at the franchisor level. And then for buyers, what are the red flags to look at when you're trying to acquire a brand? And I think it works for all. And so, there's really two options, right? So the first is you hire inside of franchising. At this point, they're going to understand some of the franchisee dynamics. I think that the thing you have to be careful of is, what is the culture of the brand that they're hiring from? Is it a franchisee-first brand? Is it not? But I have found them to be more risk averse. So typically CMOs or directors of marketing hired within franchising will do the exact same play that they did at the last franchise brand. That is normally the case, not all the time. If you hire someone from outside of franchising, in general, they will have much higher budget experience. So they've managed much larger budgets. They've been more innovative. I have a whole idea and framework as to why, but I think e-commerce is 3 years ahead of franchising. So we can look to that for marketing tactics. And so they're going to be more innovative, but they will not understand or grasp the complexities of a franchise system and how to drive change. So I've seen them come in with all these ideas and innovation, but then just hit roadblock after roadblock and get frustrated and dejected. And so, so I think there's two ways to hire. Each brings value, but both carry a significant amount of risk. So
I love how you did you learn this from the GPT that you were interacting with, on the buyer, the franchisee, and the franchisor, those three different listeners? Or did you pick that up when I
no,
started?
I mean, I think you said it, and I know that the audience of this podcast is I know you have a lot of franchisees in this system. And then even if it's just franchisees listening, you can take away from this, and the good franchisors listen to the feedback of their franchisor or franchisees, because they are the constituents of their, they are the citizens of the economy. Right. And so, you can explain this to your own franchisors and hopefully disseminate. Maybe my experience can be valuable to you. Hopefully. So,
and there might be some controversial, things discussed in here, because there's not a perfect middle ground for franchisees and franchisors when it comes to marketing. There's some give and take on both sides, and franchisees want a lot of freedom, but with that, franchisor gives up a lot of control. And there's reasons to have control, but there's also reasons to give some freedom. And so there's, I'll push you on some of the things that you've seen work and not work and why, but there's definitely a balance, and there's not a perfect balance on what works.
No. So I think it's important to kind of explain why they'll hit these roadblocks, right? So my background is in e-commerce. I came into franchising, and in our company, like culturally, there is no condescension allowed or tolerated towards our customers, which are the franchisees, right? So we are here to serve them, which is a cultural decision and is very important. But I came from e-com, and these CMOs who come from e-com are these large brands. I think this is the most important paradigm, and I think this is true for marketing or sales or any of these roles, is, okay, in e-com, if let's say, so Erik, if you're the CEO and I'm the CMO of a large privately held company, if I want to test TikTok tomorrow, I can just say, hey, Erik, CEO Erik, can I get approved $100,000 budget to test TikTok tomorrow? And I'm going to test it for a week, and I'll come back with results. You're going to give me a yes, no decision. So it's one conversation. I build one ad account. I run $100,000 to a single landing page or multiple landing pages with one checkout experience, one pixel. Everything is consistent and controlled. And then I can come back to report to you as the CEO and say, hey, this worked or didn't work. Here's my next step. So it's a very closed, tight-knit system where you can act very quickly. Now in franchising, I think it's a good example of how complicated the political structure is within franchising. So last week, we did this over the last month, and this is from years of doing it wrong. So we finally have the right process, but it's because we care and we keep making it different. So we built conversion API tracking, where we can track offline conversion events for one of our customers. So we send data from their POS on all buyers back into Meta, Google, and TikTok, so they can track the return on ad spend from click attribution through to actual buyers in the POS system. So if this was e-com, I would just tell the CEO, here's the results, right? Or the CMO as the vendor. But in franchising, because we tried that and it just does not work, the process now that we go through is we build this technology, we build a dashboard, we build documentation on this technology, we meet with the corporate team, we let them ask questions, modify the dashboard, then we go to the FAC, so the Franchise Advisory Council, and the MFC, the Marketing Fund Council. We present it to them, let them ask questions. Then we refine it even further, update the documentation. We train our 14-person success team on this matter. Then we do a webinar for all the franchisees within the system. And then we now have a checklist of have every single one of their 100+ franchisees had a one-on-one conversation as to this update with each one of our success managers. So one conversation, one decision, one ad account turns into 3 decision makers, 3 approvals, and over 100 meetings. So but that's the only way to do it properly within the franchise system. And so if you're hiring from outside of franchising, they simply do not know or want to do what is required to cascade this appropriately to the franchisees within the system. I don't know what you think about that, but I think that's a very vivid example of how much work it takes to properly campaign for the things that benefit your franchisees. So
why is that?
Well, it's a great question. Okay. So I've been thinking about this a lot. This is going to maybe be controversial, maybe not, but
I hope so.
I hope so. So I think that I like to think of franchising as a political structure. All right, Erik. So I think
that's already, it already gets controversial now. It's just political. Now it gets controversial. Let's go.
We're talking politics. So an e-commerce brand is a monarchy, right? Like the CEO is king and he's in charge. He gets to make decisions.
Like Trump.
In a franchising structure. Huh?
I said like Trump.
What'd you say?
Like Trump.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Maybe. Yeah, maybe.
Half the country thinks so. Half the country doesn't. Let's not go down that rabbit hole.
Sure.
Let's not go down that rabbit hole. Let's talk. Let's keep it out of politics. But you're the one that started it.
Attention, franchisors and franchisees. There are 2 really important resources that I want to share with you that will help you avoid costly mistakes and increase your enterprise value. The first is our free Facebook group. It's a community that has over 4,000 franchisees and franchisors in it. When somebody asks a question, they get honest and authentic answers from multiple perspectives. You can join the group for free over at franchisesecrets.com/Facebook. The second resource I want to share with you is if you're a franchisee and you want to be around a community of successful Zs and other brands and in other industries, this is why I created the Franchisee Mastermind. If you want access to the best single and multi-unit owners to know what they're doing, or if you want to be around other multi-brand owners, then you'll want to check out my Franchisee Mastermind. The reason why people join is they want access to my Rolodex, my connections, to each other. They want a shortcut success, both short-term and long-term. Links will be in the show notes or at scalablefranchise.com.
Hey, this is just political ideas, not modern politics. We'll keep how about this? We'll keep any current people out of it so that there's no political trend. There we go.
Okay, good.
Good. So what I have found is people who come from outside of franchising assume that franchising is a monarchy. They think that because they're the franchisor, they're in charge. And that's just like flat out 100% wrong. Franchising is either an oligarchy or a democracy. All of the power is with your franchisees. It really is. What's your hot take on that, Eric? What do you think about that? And I will explain further here.
Where does an FAC fit into the oligarchy or a monarchy? Or democracy, you said, right?
Democracy or an oligarchy. I mean, an oligarchy is the power, held in the hands of a few, but the state, the person who runs the organization is just going to be a figurehead to some extent, or the oligarchy can at least overthrow the person leading it. And so the FEC is just like elected amongst the body of the voters to represent the voters. So we'll use a democracy because it's probably more politically couth here. But so all of your franchisees are your voters and they will win. Like franchisees, I have seen, and I know you've seen this because you've been in a lot of brands, like franchisees will always win. Like I've seen them get the most powerful founders and CEOs fired. It just takes them a while. If the franchisor does not act in the best interest of the franchisees, eventually they will win. And so people who come from outside of franchising, and I did this, like personally, I did this. I came in and I'm like, if I can just get the franchisor to agree with me, they will make all of this happen. And so that is a misconception. So the best CMOs that I've worked with, and we've worked with a lot, they understand that they cannot make a decision about marketing and then command that it happens. They cannot command their franchisees to spend their money to do what the CMO wants. They have learned that they have to campaign for buy-in. They have to constantly be out there promoting their ideas, their strategies. They have to be backing up with data and decision-making, and they have to have a one-on-one relationship with their citizens or constituents, which are the franchisees. And they have to every single year get reelected to represent them and make decisions with their money. And I think that's the best example I can think of around why people coming in from outside of franchising just get it wrong. They think it's a monarchy and it's not. So that's my hot take for today.
So have you seen franchisees get rid of the wrong person? Like they are so upset with somebody and then they didn't realize how that person really wasn't as bad as they thought because they only have experience in one brand. And so I've seen franchisees get so upset and with a founder or a C-level executive. And yet I'm like, if you guys only knew that they're not really that bad, you don't know what bad looks like. Because, just talking from all my franchisee experience, I've been a part of brands where they're just so mad at the franchisor for whatever reason. I'm like, you guys have no idea how good you really have it here. So have you seen good people get thrown under the bus or franchisees upset with good people when they really didn't realize how good they have it? Have you seen that?
Yeah. I mean, yes, for sure. But most of the time, I think it's avoidable. I actually think it is avoidable. Um, when that happens, the majority of the time, it is because the CMO or the director of marketing or the head of sales or the CEO is unwilling to meet one-on-one with each of the franchisees. And so the CMOs who I think win, and this is what I would expect. Like if I'm a franchisor, I would hire for EQ over IQ, or especially EQ over experience. Like I would almost say, are you willing to be the customer service, the director of customer success for marketing for our franchisees? Like at a franchisor, everyone is a franchise business consultant. We're all here to educate our franchisees. And so the CMOs who have a great strategy and the franchisees hate it is typically a lack of education or understanding. So the franchisors or CMOs who are willing to get on a one-on-one call with those franchisees who don't know how good they have it, typically they can win them over. I mean, you're going to have your hard franchisees to win over, and there's a bell curve for everything. But I think it's a mindset shift and a cultural decision at the franchisor level. Like if you require even your CEO and CMO to meet with your franchisees, you're going to have more buy-in. More people are going to vote for what you're deciding to do. And your initiatives will actually work because you're going to get buy-in. That's the crazy thing about all this, Eric, is like the CMOs and the marketing at the franchisor level, they're not actually spending their money. Like almost no franchise brands spend their own profits on marketing. They spend the franchisee's money in one of two ways. They ask you, the franchisee, and I know you know this because you are a franchisee, they ask you to spend your money in your local market. And then they also take a percentage of marketing as a marketing fund. So they have to campaign and get you to buy in and believe because they're spending your money. Like they're not spending their own money on marketing. They're spending your money. And so I think that's a mindset shift. So I think you can win people over through one-on-one care and conversation if you view them as the clients that you're serving. So
I think that's a great point. And I've seen the same thing, as I've, on all sides of franchising, I've been on all sides of it. And I think the ones that put themselves in an ivory tower, they're not going to win. They might have the best strategies, the best marketing or whatever, but if they can't, be in touch with the franchisees for whatever reason, they're going to lose. And then you've got others that might not be doing everything correctly. They go and they are talking to the franchisees. They're understanding their frustrations. They're understanding what's working, what's not from the franchisee's mindset. And then they start to tweak and change things and actually listen and not just pretend to listen. So I think I love it when founders and C-level executives or directors get out there and they're involved with franchisees. That's a big distinction there. Have you seen, what are some of the best ways for them to do that? Like if they are going to listen to franchisees, because you can't, that's why there's FACs, because 100 franchisees, they're going to have 100 different ideas and they're going to have 100 different strong opinions of the way this one thing should be done. And that's why a franchisor can't be listening to every one of the 100 franchisees and doing what they want the franchisor to do. You just can't do that. You just be running around in reactionary mode all the time. That's why there's an FAC to start to put a lot of this together to deliver to the franchisor. And I think it helps the franchisees on the FAC understand what the franchisor, the frameworks that they have to deal with them, because they look at it differently than the franchisee because they have to. Thoughts on that?
Yeah. I mean, so I think the the FAC, Franchise Advisory Council, can be useful for vetting and approving decision-making and budget allocation. And I think it should be very much used as a filter for that, for we'll call it action-oriented decision-making. But, the franchisor and the FAC are going to come up with a plan. And we're going to say, hey, we want you to allocate your money in this way. These are the reasons why. And then franchisees are going to have questions, right? And so if the franchisor at that point, the CMO, is unwilling to have or doesn't encourage and require their team to then have follow-up conversations with franchisees who have questions, not to listen and do whatever they ask. That's very different than educating them on the value of why we're making these decisions. Here's the data to support this. That and then second, and this is, I actually think is very important. is working with your vendor partners to have a similar or have the same messaging. So I'm another hot take. I think this is true. Someone can correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm 98% sure that we have more meetings in every brand that we work with their franchisees than the franchisor has with their own franchisees. So we will meet with every single franchisee within a month. We'll send them Loom videos and email updates. And so the franchise model does not work without a vendor network. And that's why there's so many great, vibrant vendors out there. And so if you have a partnership mentality with your vendors and you say, this is our strategy, this is what we're pushing, everyone gets bought in on it, the FAC, the brand, and the vendors. And then you ask the vendors, like we view ourselves as extensions of the brand team, and we all go educate the franchisee on why this strategy works. We can triple our number of conversations very quickly. But I still think that the franchisor has to be willing and actually eager to answer questions and educate their citizens on their franchisees on why this is the right decision. So
why have you seen brands or founders or executives not be willing to do that? What's the issue of them not wanting to talk to franchisees and engage with them?
Well, I think the harsh reality is that everything comes down to leadership. So if the founder or leader at the organization is trying to get a quick exit and is only worried about the top line EBITDA numbers and their 3-year sale, then that will cascade down to their team, right? And most of them don't hit that objective because they're focusing on the wrong thing. And so I think first it's a leadership problem. People, they are focused so far on this outcome instead of focusing on the unit economics, which the whole business, as you know, is entirely made up of, if you have successful franchisees, your franchise will be successful. If you don't, you will not. And so I think it's a leadership mentality, top down. I think that's the number one thing. And then second, I think in especially private equity roll-ups, I think you run a really significant risk of, and for any private equity people listening, I think this is, hopefully you can take this, seriously, because I've seen this happen repeatedly, is there is a brand name at the parent company. So we'll call it parentcompany.com. And there are certain people who work for that parent company at parentcompany.com, but they're the only ones who care about parentcompany.com. Like if you're a franchisee of sub company 1, you don't care about parentcompany.com. You only care about your individual performance of your business, which you bought. You did not buy parent company. You bought sub company 1. And so I think as these roll-ups happen, they can become very disconnected from the end outcome. And then culturally that will trickle down to the brands. And then it's just it does not end well. I've seen it not end well. So what's your take on that, Erik?
Well, I think, I think I agree. I just saw, some of the details on a brand that is going to market. And they're shopping it with their investment banker sent out, the info to different private equity companies and whatnot. So I get those and I see them, and it's interesting. And what they're showing is same store sales increasing. They're like, we've had 3 years, year over year, same store sales increasing at 18 months or older, in terms of the franchisees. And then it talked about unit level economics, how that is increasing. EBITDA profitability is going up, and here it is. So I think the founders that are kind of short-sighted is another way to kind of say it. If they're just looking for an exit in 3 years, won't fully understand what they really should be focusing on to have a successful exit in 3 years. And profitability of franchisees is one of those things they really should be focused on. So as you said that, what do you think they're focused on besides profitability for franchisees? Because I think those two go hand in hand, but I also think franchisors are thinking of ways to lower costs at the franchisor level, to increase EBITDA at the franchisor level, to have a larger exit. I think that's what they're probably thinking. And it comes at the cost of, the more investment that there's made at the franchisor level to have talent there to be able to help franchisees have same store sale increases, have higher average tickets, gets profitability quicker. Like all of that stuff will also have an impact on a sale. So as you hear me say all that, combined with your first statement of someone's looking for a quick sale, someone's looking for franchisee profitability, unit level economics, like what do you see out there as the franchisors that think they're just are just focused on a quick sale? What are they missing?
Yeah, I think it's the relationships with the franchisees and the culture around that predominantly. So I can give you an example, like, because we hire outside of franchising. Actually, one of our core principles is we're going to take talent from outside of franchising and we're going to indoctrinate them into the franchise world. But we do that; it's a very painful process. So, like, we just hired a COO and a head of digital from used to work at Hawk Media, huge e-com ad agency, and it's going to be painful to educate them and on what we will and will not tolerate around our franchisees. Like, they are going to have to meet with franchisees. They have to understand they have to understand the unit level economics of a franchise business. They have to have a relationship with franchisees. And so I think it's counterintuitive. So if you're focusing on EBITDA and you're focusing on, like, shared services is a really big thing across multiple brands. Like, I see more and more private equity companies doing this. They have shared service FBCs or shared service marketing teams, which can be really great, right? Like, it can be, but you're also fractionalizing the support for your franchisees. And it's really hard to be an expert in all of these different functions, much less to have one-on-one conversations that are meaningful with the franchisees who are on the ground floor. And so, I think my perfect, I guess, to kind of wrap, some of this up, what do I think franchisors should do? Maybe that's helpful. Like, what do I think is the right? Because I'm talking negative, and I actually don't think this is negative. Like, I think it's great. Some of the best CMOs we worked with have been from outside of franchise. So what I think the right formula is I think that the leader first, include, me, I think about this all the time. Like, I had a business coach last week as we're hiring all these new people outside of franchise, ask me, like, what's the number one thing you want to protect? And I'm like, our franchisee first culture. Like, it has to be, we focus on our customer, not the big names that we work with at the franchisor level. And so I think that the CEOs or executives at the franchise organizations need to first look themselves in the mirror and say, okay, do we today have a culture that's franchisee first? If yes, great. We should hire from outside of franchising because they're going to bring innovation and talent and ideas. But we should do it and surround them with people who have been in franchising for a long time. If your entire team is from outside of franchising, I've never once seen that work. But if you bring in talent from outside who are surrounded by people who have a culture of serving and view themselves as support for the franchisees, that works the best. But you just constantly have to correct them back into, I know that worked at large company A, but it will not work at my franchise organization because our franchisees have $1,000 left to spend on marketing. They don't have $1 million. And so, so I think the correct formula is that, to summarize, is culture of franchisee first serving, have a couple core roles who are veteran franchise, and then hire outside of franchising in positions around those people to drive innovation. Because otherwise we will get stagnant and do exactly what everyone did 3 years ago. So that's my formula for success. And that's what we try to do here at Franchise Rank.
So if you were to talk to a franchisor about, if you were advising them, by the way, you said you had a business coach, your founder, Brian Holmes over there, was in my mastermind talking about how to get rid of business coaches and just use AI. So I don't know what you're doing with the business coach over there. Actually, he told me he uses he gets you guys business coaches, and they're very specific and very good and very expensive. But I know you get the most out of them. So that's, again, another conversation for another day. You use your AI to help you with your business coach real quick, off topic.
Yeah, for sure. So Brian did a podcast last week on like uploading our personality tests and frameworks. And so, I mean, yes, I learned through interaction. And so ChatGPT has been very great to supplement that coaching in between. So I don't have to call people, and I can act, and obviously has a much wider knowledge base. But I mean, yeah, I've done all of it. I've done strategic coach for 4 years, been an EO for 4 years, had a personal coach for 4 years, scaling up for 2 years, EOS for 6 years. Like, we've done all the coaching, and it definitely helps us be more focused and help us go faster. So big proponent of mentorship and knowledge. So
that wasn't just a random tangent that I went on. I wanted to get your coach hat on. So that's why I wanted you to talk about that. So if you were coaching a franchise organization and they wanted to be franchisee first, but they don't know how to be franchisee first without getting steamrolled over saying yes to every franchisee for every request that they have or desire that they have. So how does a good franchisee first culture look without being a yes to everything the franchisee wants? Because I don't think that's what you mean by being franchisee first. It's not having franchisees control everything, but it's having a franchisee first culture. So if you were consulting a brand, how would you coach them? How would you consult them on that franchisee first culture? Tell me the things that you've always wanted to say to them, but you've never been able to say.
All right. Well, how about this? I'll come at it from, instead of acting like I know everything, I'll tell you how we do it here, and that'll be a reflection.
No.
That's my experience.
No. I know that's easy for you to do. But I want you to do it as if you were coaching a franchisor. Disclaimer. Aren doesn't know everything. He's never been a franchisor. He's doing this from his perspective of Franchise Ramp truly being a franchisee first culture. This is what he would say to a franchisor. Now, if I'm in the room with them, I'd be like, Aren, this makes sense, but this thing over here doesn't make sense. So you have the freedom to say whatever you want, and you're probably not going to be right on some of it, which is fine. But so the stage is set for you to now be the paid consultant, at $3,000 an hour to give a franchisor feedback on what it looks to be a franchisee first culture as a franchisor.
Yeah. Okay. To say simply, I would say culture is it's not what you preach. It's what you tolerate. And so I have seen repeatedly ecosystems and franchisors who get on stage at their annual convention and talk about how they love their franchisees, and then they get on a meeting the next week and shit on them. And so if you preach it, but you tolerate it, it's not a culture. That's just, you're selling snake oil. Honestly, I'm going to call you out. And so, that's me being a coach, as Erik wants me to get real crazy here. But I think that the only way to make that a true statement and be genuine in your approach on stage is if you're willing to fire someone over it. Like if you're willing to say, hey, we mean what we say here. And if you're going to talk about franchisees that way, or not be willing to show up for a call, or not answer questions for the third time because they still don't get it because they're not a marketing executive, then you can't work here. We're on this journey. And if you want to be on our bus, these culture is what you tolerate. These are the requirements to be here. And so that, I think, is the easiest way to sum it up. Is I see all the time franchisors preach on stage and then, do the exact opposite, or tolerate their team doing the exact opposite the following week. Like, franchisees are not the burden. And if your team communicates about them that way, then you're not a franchisee first culture as much as you say it on stage on your keynote, So there we go. That's the hard truth presented by Aren Johnstone today.
Spelled Aren. Now, if you're a franchisee first culture as a franchisor, and you have franchisees that don't like something, or they disagree with something, or they have ideas that are like not true to the brand, how does a franchisee first culture talk to them, respond to them, interact with these franchisees that are going to actually hurt that franchisee first culture, and they don't really understand it because they are not at the corporate level. Part of the corporate team is to protect the brand and to protect all of the franchisees. So how do they interact with franchisees that they know might be toxic, or have the wrong ideas, or the wrong intentions, or just wrong in general? How does a franchisee first culture deal with that?
Yeah. Same way that, me as the CEO of Franchise Ramp deals with toxic employees, or should, right? So I think there are two categories of questions. I think there are franchisees who truly do not understand the marketing initiatives and strategies. And so for those people who are genuinely open to learning and being educated and trying your strategies, that's an education gap. So you need to get on the call with them and explain to them, hey, this is why we're doing this. This is all the testing that's occurred. Here's how we're going to report back to you that this was successful. Are you willing to try this with me? And if you are, I've never heard a franchisee say, no, I'm not willing to try the strategy that's backed up by data and all these decisions, maybe once or twice. And for those once or twice franchisees that are not, this is a whole nother conversation, and one that I have less experience on as a franchisor, but I can talk to it from an employer standpoint is I've heard from many franchisors, and I've seen it with franchisees. There are certain franchisees who just do not belong culturally on that company's bus. Same way we have employees who might be great people, might be really talented, but they just do not fit on our franchise ramp company journey. And so the way that we handle those is, you say first time, hey, I'm sorry if I wasn't clear. I'm going to own this first time. Here's where we're going. Here's the journey we're on. This is what's expected, and this is what's required to be here. Like, we'll never tolerate clients or employees being outright rude to each other, right? Of course, like there's some minimum requirements, and then we have some more strict ones on culture. And then the second time, it's like, hey, this is now job critical. If you're going to continue to break these agreements that we've made, that if you agree you want to be on this journey, we're going to have to part ways. And then the third time you say, hey, I see that you are choosing to no longer be a part of this journey. Let's talk about what separation looks like. And so by that third time, they're actually choosing, you're not even firing them or telling them to get out of the system. They have chosen no longer to be on your journey because you made it explicitly clear where you're going and what's required to be on the journey. So they chose to get off the bus, so to speak.
So now talk to a new franchisor, and they might have 3 or 4 or 5 people at the corporate team, and they are listening to this and they're like, of course I want to be a franchisee first culture, because everybody starts out that way. Like everyone
does. It's so crazy.
Yeah. And they say it, but then franchisee gives pushback on something. Franchisee may or may not be right with that, but they start to understand what franchising really is. And that's why Jeff and I did 2 podcasts on like, is my business franchisable? And that we're trying to talk people out of becoming a franchisor in that podcast. Because it's hard. It takes a lot of work. It's not the quick way to make money. There could be a big pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, but it's a lot of work to get there as a franchisor. So talk to that new franchisor. They have the FDD. They have a handful of franchisees. Things are going well. They've got a handful of people on the corporate team. They want to, in a few years, have 50 franchisees, and they want to be that franchisee first culture. What advice would you give them as their overpaid $5,000 an hour coach?
Yeah. It's uncomfortable for me to be in this. As an EO member here, we speak from experience, so it's hard for me to do the, so I think to be very aware that every emerging brand has a major transition point between 15 and 30 locations, depending on how fast you grow. And that transition point is you go from having weekly conversations with every franchisee and a personal relationship, and you text every night about how it's going, to you have to start running the business as an organization, and you can no longer have those super personal one-on-one conversations every day, every moment of every day. And so, so I think it's the classic, what got you here, what will not get you there example. So at the beginning, like everyone in your team just needs to be so glued into every franchisee, because you all know zero about what you're doing, right? An emerging brand is figuring stuff out every moment of every day. And so their feedback is actually very critical to your success. But after you get to 15 to 30 and you can no longer have that amount of time with those franchisees, at that point, you do know some stuff. And so the nature of that relationship is going to change. You can speak from experience, you can speak to the data, and you also can start to hire a team underneath you that is willing to, but I think the important part is the team you hire willing to have those conversations and share that information? Or are they I think if they come in with the mentality that they're king, it's never going to end well. Like they have to come in with their job is to serve and be a customer service rep. Like CMOs, another hot take, most CMOs, the best ones are just glorified, extremely talented customer service reps on marketing. And because they drive the most change, because they serve their customers, they drive the most change. So I think being aware of that transition point and setting up and requiring of your team as you transition to educate the franchisees as to why and pointing back to the data. So,
all right, last question. You and I were talking about this before the call. You are a verbal processor, so this will be easy for you, like super easy. What prompt should someone say or type after they've had some conversations with franchisees that would help them understand if they are a franchisee first culture? If you had to give some type of prompt to ChatGPT to give feedback on something to understand if they're a franchisee first culture, what would that prompt entail?
I think ChatGPT will be naturally biased. What I would do if I was a franchisor and I really wanted to figure this out is I would have I would ask your franchisees a very simple question. I would say, what is it you want us to stop doing at corporate? What do you want us to start doing at corporate? And what do you want us to continue doing at corporate? And I think that's a very telling exercise that we go through somewhat often as managers at our organization. And then what you can do is you can take that responses in an anonymous survey from your franchisees, upload it to ChatGPT and say, hey, this is a survey response from our franchisees. Are we doing a good job serving them? So I think that's what I would do, is actually get some feedback from your, think of it like a poll amongst your voters, because they are your voters. And so they will ultimately reelect you or not.
So that's, you totally dodged my prompting question, but it shows me how thoughtful you are when it comes to prompting, because you want to give it good data to get good output. And the other thing that you could do, if you don't have the ability to, or the data set with franchisees, put this transcript of this podcast into ChatGPT and say, what does a franchisee first culture look like after listening to this podcast? And it will pump it out. And then you can put that in, turn that into a prompt or a custom GPT, and then you can always get better at that. And then feed it,
Right.
feed it internal meetings that you have at your franchise. If you have internal meetings, feed it to see if you are a franchisee first culture, and if not, what you can do to be that. And then your like boots on the ground in with your franchisees, whether it's a face-to-face or most likely online meetings between your business coach, your franchise business coach, and the franchisees. That will start to tell you if you're a franchisee first culture. Again, it doesn't mean you're doing everything the franchisees want, but Aren's absolutely right. It's a culture piece. It's a mindset. And I just did a podcast with Adam Ross, who's a operating partner with us at Front Street, on like growth minded entrepreneurs and leaders. And these two things combined are going to be gold. So that's the other thing that I would say to do. And you're right. ChatGPT can be very biased. And so you have to work it so it's not biased and will give you the right output. Any last comments on that?
Yeah, I would say, no, I'd say create a GPT. So like Erik said, if you download the transcript of this, it's very easy to create a GPT on the paid version. You just hit, create GPT, and you upload the transcript as a PDF and say, read this transcript. I'm going to feed you internal meeting transcripts, and I want you to tell me or grade me how we did on these. So then you upload that GPT, and then in a new thread using that GPT, you can upload your internal meeting transcripts and say, or even more importantly than internal meetings, your team meeting with franchisees, either your FBCs or your executives, your CMOs, your head of sales, your chief growth officers, COO. And then that's a great way to use GPTs for personalized feedback.
All right. I could even go one level deeper, and I got a call I've got to go to. Have it do like the reporting, the output that you get on these is really important. I like red light, yellow light, green light to understand, just visually see how they would rate these different things, tone different things. And then also see how different, the franchise business coaches or your internal meetings are progressing in that. So you are what you are today. That's not changing, but you can improve. And I would like to see that over 3, 6, 12 months. And I would like to see improvements in these different areas. So anyway, nerded out on AI a little bit. Aren, man, that was good. Thanks for coming on, man.
Thanks, Erik, for having me. We love being on the Franchise Secrets podcast. So thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Franchise Secrets podcast. Links to everything can be found over at franchisesecrets.com. And if you want my help with anything from starting your own franchise to growing your current franchise business, please visit scalablefranchise.com.